All right, welcome to Comic Book Radio. Tonight is going to be a good show. They're all good shows, but tonight's going to be a gooder one. It is September 8th, Friday night, episode 67 of Comic Book Radio. My guest tonight is Joe CATAPANO. I'm your host, Peter Cimetti, and I want to just say hello to you in the chat before we bring Joe on. We got Ross Wolf here. What's up, Ross? Enjoying the thumbnail that features Joe CATAPANO's book there, Star Circuit. We got Bear says, hey guys, hey ya Pete, how's it hanging? Hey Bear, hope you're doing well. We got Jay Ryan here. What's up, Jay? Thank you for joining us tonight. We got Darth Josh in the house as well. What's up, Darth Josh? What Geeks Do Network says, hey Pete, love watching your shows and you're on most days of the week. Thank you. I'm trying to do them just about every day. Just about every day. September's pretty packed and October's almost full. So, been doing this for a while now, maybe a month and a half or so. And I'm enjoying it. I'm loving it. These conversations have been great with everybody that I've had on the channel. Let's see. We also have, I'm looking through. We got Wayne here. What's up, Wayne? Sumo Thori as well. What's up, Sumo? 40% Zed in the house, along with Midnight Mausoleum. Hey, Midnight Mausoleum. And Joe CATAPANO, who is here, also in the chat. Look at that guy. He's getting around. Manny's in the chat as well. Hey, Manny. John's Longbox as well. What's up, John? Eating the burrito, sorting comics and watching. That's a good Friday night. Ruby Jade in the house. What's up, Ruby Jade? Grape Nuka-Cola, how's it going? Says, just had time to read King Cryptid 1-4. Loved them. There was so many Mothman references in issue 1. I can tell you know your stuff on cryptids. Looking forward to issue 100 plus. That makes me feel good inside. Thank you, Grape Nuka-Cola. Yeah. Lots more to come. Lots more. Also, we got Gerald Lang in the house. What's up, Gerald? Hope you're doing well. All right, so without further ado, let me bring on, let's see here. There is the fancy little banner that flies by. Joe CATAPANO. What's up, Joe?
What's up, Pete? How you doing?
I'm doing good, man. I'm happy to have you on here. And I want to say, before you say a word, I want to let everybody know that Joe did something. Joe was already on my list of people to get to eventually to have on the show and have a conversation with. I enjoy the work he does. I've had him on before with open mics and whatnot, but I wanted to actually have a longer conversation with him. But Joe did something that was great. And what Joe did, so many people don't do this. And what Joe did was he sent me a message talking about how he liked the show, which was good. That's fine. But he talked to me about things he wanted to see talked about on the show. And if he was on, he'd love to talk about those things as well. That's how you do it. Don't just email me or DM me and go like, oh, yeah, I got a thing to promote and can you help me sell it? I get it. But are we going to talk about that for a whole hour? No, let me know what you want to talk about. And Joe did that. So kudos to you, man. That was great getting a message like that.
Well, I don't always do that, but like obviously I think like if if something sparks when you're listening to it, and why not? That's where it's why the DMs are there, kind of, So
Yeah. I really liked you had so many different kinds of things you wanted to talk about and discuss. And some of them I've actually gotten to since that point in time, but I'm more than happy to go over them with you. And just kind of pick what's on your mind about those topics and dive deep into your perspective on them. Sure. But first things first, how you doing?
Doing good. It's another day in my world of juggling different clients and comics mostly. But my life is usually a mixing of storyboards and comics and random other sometimes art gigs and sometimes other. Just like not so much art stuff, but life stuff. Yeah, it's just been busy. I know you're busy with the show, but I'm sure it's busy with Alterna too, right?
Oh yeah. Everything's a juggling act, right? Which is why the whole subtitle of tonight's show is the balancing act of comic book creation, because it really is. How do you do it in terms of what you're Not just doing with everything else other than making comics, but also when it comes to making your comics.
Well, the time wise, you mean like how
Yeah, like
typical time?
how do you prioritize? What is your hierarchy of tasks to get to that sort of thing?
So, man, I'm constantly trying to find the better system. I've probably switched between two or three different systems, and currently I'm trying like a literal hour to hour block time schedule to figure out how do I like. Because here's the thing: when you work on art as an artist, you sometimes can get like to this mental state where you're overworking it or something, or you're like you've done enough, but your brain's like still wanting to I know like scratch the marks on the paper or something.
Yeah,
And so
you got to
this
learn to
time,
let go.
right. The time block thing I think is going to help with that. So that's the introduction of this thing where like I'm definitely going to stop after 90 minutes, do something else, and then I'll come back and hopefully with fresh eyes, not work on it as much. And if it does need some extra love, give it to it, depending on what I'm working on. But I think I'm pretty usual. Like anybody else has at least a list of the pages you need to get done, like the status of which each how each page is currently at. If it's on inking or coloring, and then keeping tabs on everything. But time wise, each day right now it's kind of trying to mix between not putting in enough time and not overworking.
Yeah, yeah. It's difficult sometimes to squeeze even a minute out of the day because there's so many things that pop up from day to day. It's sometimes I feel like I'm not making comics, I'm not publishing comics. I'm like some weird kind of firefighter putting out various forms of fires. And
Yeah,
I'm like, I didn't sign up to do this. I didn't
dude.
sign up to be like a problem solver and a firefighter and all this other nonsense. But that's part of it. That's a big part of it.
I can only imagine because I think that's one area. That's one of the hats I've not put on yet. I know a lot of indie guys have jumped into like the publishing side and grabbing new IPs and like collaborating or at least just grabbing new talent and then starting their own kind of label. I haven't done that yet. That's one hat I haven't tried, but it feels like there'll be triple the fires when you get dabble into that.
Is that
Uh,
something that you think you'll go down, or that road, or you're like, oh, no.
I maybe it's something it's not natural for me to go down that road. I think I'm the guy that like, you know, it happens with every job where you're really good at what you do. You're good at the art, the editing, or whatever, and at some point you expand enough and scale up enough where you become a manager. And I don't ever really want to be that role, but depends on what happens. Maybe it's all under this universe that I've created, and in that case, maybe because then it would feel intuitive enough. I think.
Yeah, it's tough to say. When I first started, I didn't think I'd go down this road. So it's difficult to say where things take you. But at the same time, man, if you're feeling like I don't really know, I don't think because I was a little bit more open ended to that
Mm.
possibility. But I would say stick to doing what it is you're doing and what brings you joy and happiness. Because if the more you get away from that, the more it's gonna feel like a big burden and a drain, and then you're gonna fall out of love with it. You know?
Yeah, motivation's a huge thing. Like, it's one of the bigger. It's one of the struggles that I dealt with, and maybe dives into one of the things I brought up, like when I brought up some of the topics.
Yeah.
Um, is just like because a lot of people bring up the word burnout, but I don't think that necessarily describes what we're talking about here. It's mostly dealing with motivation, and
Yep.
so it could happen like we just talked about, where you pick a role or you put on a hat that you really don't know what you're doing or maybe don't like enough, and then it sucks the joy out of everything else around it, and you end up killing whatever you're trying to do in the first place. Uh, I guess that's one part of feeling burnt out or not feeling motivated. You
How
know,
do you stay motivated?
well, the story, I thrive on straight up passion, like diving so deep into the story that I don't even. I'm more in tune with the story than what's happening outside in the background. That's how I like really living. The problem is you can't really stay there often because the people around you, like, hate you after a while. God bless Sherry. Sherry is my fiance, and she definitely puts up with most of me and my haze, the Star
Can you
Circuit
give
haze.
me an example of you getting so deep into the matrix of Star Circuit?
Yeah, I mean, just for a long time, I was getting into the topic of free will, and in sci-fi and cyberpunk, that's a big thing. And I'm trying to come up with my own spin, and just like it kind of merged with how I was like dealing with everything. So free will, the debate is, do we have it or we don't have it? And there's a bunch of different categories, compatibilism, and these different types of ways to look at it. And anyway, I every time I come to dinner, I'm coming up with a new philosophical problem that I'm trying to solve within the book, or characters that I'm trying to deal with, and it almost seems like I forget to ask the simple things, like how was your day, and I'm in the world
That's
of
so
Star
more
Circuit.
mundane than that. Let's
Yeah,
talk about the big problems.
right.
I'm blessed to have someone who at least seems to enjoy my rantings and ravings. If she doesn't, she really puts up a good act. But it seems very sincere. We still have engrossing conversations all these years later about this kind of stuff. And when it comes to bouncing even ideas back and forth about something I'm thinking of, about how something's going to carry out or whatever, she is. If I had to say that there was someone that knows as much about King Cryptid, almost anyway, as me, it would have to be her.
Yeah.
But at the same time, yeah, it is, every now and then you got to step back and go, okay, I'm kind of getting a little too into it. But it's thrilling, though, when it happens, right? When it becomes this whole thing, this whole new reality for you with your stories that you're telling, and you start exploring these themes and these philosophical inclinations.
Yeah, it's the problem is, like I said, I run on passion. So like I'd say what you're talking about, I absolutely relate to, because I unload on whoever's around me, which is was mostly my fiance. So like she, like you said, maybe knows the book just as well, or at least parts of the book just as well as I do. And depending on what's happening, I flavor my day depending on what is happening in the book. Like maybe it's an exhilarating part, or maybe it's a downer page, and it like influences my mood maybe sometimes. But I think that's when I thrive most. That when the passion is there, I almost know the characters like they're real people, and that feels the best to me. It feels like I'm doing it right.
Yeah.
I don't know any other way to do it. So.
Yeah. I mean, do you ever get in this state of mind when you're creating and you're putting, I imagine you're putting some of these characters through the ringer and you almost feel guilty about it? You ever get that?
Yeah, I almost like this. I'm trying to blend, because I really like to outline and go detailed in my story, my scripting, I say. But Stephen King has this approach where you like kind of surprise yourself as you go, and I think I don't like doing it that way.
That
But
was the cocaine talking.
I bet it was. And his just his wiliness, but he's so prolific, it's hard not to listen to him. But yeah, for me, I find that like if I don't know, let's just say I've outlined everything and something surprises me, I usually end up going with it because it seems novel to me as well as the audience. Like,
Yeah.
I'm like, I didn't even know the character could do this. Okay, the character is going to do this now, and it's something I think works because it's the only way. Not the only way, but it's a tried and true way. If you get to that point where you don't even know what's happening, it's going to feel novel in the book as well. So yeah, I put the characters through as much as I can, and then at some point they almost do something that I didn't even think they could do. And then that's like with chapter 2, what I'm trying to do is try to keep you on a no pun intended, on a road that seems like you don't know what the turns are. So and I think that's what I do. And by the end of it, what I really like in stories is when the odds are so stacked against the characters that you love that you don't really even know how it's possible for them to get out. It's like it doesn't. You don't even see the road out of the mist. You know.
Yeah, yeah. And I hear what you're saying too. It's kind of like when you get to a point where the stories kind of start telling themselves. It's a good place to be. It's an exciting place to be, but it's also kind of a nerve-wracking place to be. You know, so
Hmm.
you got to be really comfortable with letting go of that control aspect of it. And I feel like there's a lot of creators out there that, and it comes over time, and it's usually a newish kind of creator that feels this way. But I've read some stuff from people, or seen a movie or whatever from some people who it's clear that they were not comfortable with letting go of control, and whatever it might have been. Maybe it was them, maybe it was someone that was collaborating, maybe it was someone who was in charge and was like, no, you can't do it this way, you can't tell this.
Hmm.
um but it still felt like predictable in the worst way. Not predictable in like, okay, this came to a logical conclusion, so
Yeah.
might have been predictable, but it was still satisfying and it made sense. And yeah, okay. But these kind of you predict it as soon as like the first 10 minutes start rolling, or the first 3 pages you're through something, and you're like, that character's gonna be like that. That's gonna play out, and that's gonna happen. And then when that happens, I'm like, man, they're not that comfortable yet with letting the story begin to take over.
Right. And in some ways, if they're that much of a beginner, it's not too bad because they're probably getting the gears greased. The gears have
Yeah,
to be
yeah.
moving a little bit before that can happen. But I totally get that. I feel that with professionals' stories sometimes. Like it just happens to
Oh,
be this
totally.
story that's maybe just a little too derivative, even though they've got a good spin, but maybe it's just a little too tried and true or something.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, you can see they're doing like the Hollywood style where you take this and you take that and you mix it, and it's so
yeah.
true to that you can see the influences bleeding everywhere.
Yeah, you need you like the audience. The best part about like viewing and being a part of this escapism that we all love. Oh, thanks, Darth Josh. Incredible. Um, so the best part about like this escapism is that like you actually get to escape, and the only way that happens is if you forget that like you're reading, and if you're constantly kind of seeing the man behind the mirror, or like the Wizard of Oz kind of thing there, it's not going to work out. Like you can't even break out of the meta. You're constantly looking at it as a book being retold to you, um, which is
That's a
weird.
great point.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
what's your? I know you. I see your awesome sketchbook that I'm sure you'll promo at some point.
Oh, thank you, man.
Your 5 minute sketch, or is it 5 minute? Is that what you called it?
Yeah, it's 5 minutes for art. I still have I don't know if it's still pinned to the top of the chat, but it was here for a bit. If it's not there anymore, then I'll put it up. But yeah, it's a secret perk on the King Cryptid campaign. It's 5 minutes for art, and it's a sketchbook that has over 105-minute sketches, portrait sketches in it that I did years ago. But I also do one for you, anybody who wants to get that. It's $25, free shipping in the U.S. There's the link again. And any character you want, I'll do a quick 5 minute portrait sketch for you on the front
Dude,
page.
I got to tell you, man, I haven't seen a ton of your work. I've seen a few things, but like those sketches look amazing, dude.
Thank you, man.
And well worth the 25, especially if you're drawing in it. But yeah, I'm stoked to do it. But I bring that up because I forget, because you wear so many hats that like, oh, I probably could ask Pete this, which is like a lot of what I feel that was the issue, I guess, mentally as I kept working on my book, was sometimes there's like either an imposter thing that happens where, oh, now people are backing the book now. It means that like I have to be who I am pretending to be, or like, you know what I mean? This sort of
Oh, what do
impostery
you
kind
mean
of,
by that? Who are you pretending to be, Joe?
right. I wish that was there was an easy answer to that. I think it just means that self-doubt pops up, and I think at some point down the road, like you get good at something and it just happens to be art. And I want to ask you, like, you do or good art, do you feel like any part of like yourself is too attached to it? Like I think at some point, depending on the day. If I'm not doing something that's either outstanding or pretty good, I feel kind of bad. Like I like maybe not as a person, but at least it brings me down enough. You got any of these feelings where like it kind of bums you out?
I'm gonna try to. I'm gonna try to navigate the waters here. So course correct me if I'm going a little bit off.
Sure.
So do you mean like is there any time when I'm drawing something and I feel like it's not good enough, like that kind of a thing?
Well, I guess it runs a little deeper because I guess I'm referring to like maybe to your self worth, like if you want to put it to like a super more bummer level. But
Oh
like
man.
if you draw something and then maybe you're using it as a crutch to feel good for yourself that day.
Oh
I know
wow.
I've been there in the past, but I don't think.
Okay.
Anyway, I felt like that. I want to see if anybody else has felt like that before.
Yeah, okay. Wow, it's more of like you're having an existential crisis as you're making art, right?
I something like that, but it's not always because a lot of times you're drawing well, so it doesn't really matter if you're drawing well. Then
So when you're
you're
drawing
feeling well.
well, when
Yeah,
you're feeling great, you're like, "Oh, this is coming out great. I'm a good person." You know, there's like a moral referendum on yourself when when you're drawing
right,
bad. It's
right.
like, "I'm the worst person in the world. I don't deserve to live. I should have never been born. What is wrong with
I
me? Why does anyone like this? Why does anyone like me? Why does anyone
mm,
even want to be around me or like this art that I'm making?" So you mean it's kind of like that? Like if you're
yeah, this
doing
is getting too
something.
much like therapy here, Pete. This is Pete's therapy session. Put on
Well,
your
I have to say honestly, no, I've never felt that way,
mm,
and I hate saying something like that. I mean, I've obviously had days where, if you felt that way, I have
mm,
had days where you're drawing something and it's frustrating, and you're like, man, it doesn't look good, But I find that when I'm doing something like that and I'm getting bogged down and it's not looking good, it usually stems from I'm drawing something where I haven't really drawn it before, so I have to rely on looking at reference, and I'm
mm,
getting almost too bogged down into the reference, and I'm
mm.
losing my sense of self. So that's why I actually started drawing really fast, and faster and faster and faster.
Interesting.
So yeah, because like a card used to take me like 40 minutes and used to look like dog crap.
Mm,
And now I can do the card in 5 minutes and it looks 10 times better than a card that used to take me 40.
right,
But I concentrated on getting, it's the age old thing of get the gesture down, go with your instinct, don't erase, just go with it.
right.
And eventually kind of build up like that muscle memory, like you're an athlete. And it's
Yeah,
like
it's a
you
weird.
just, yeah.
I don't feel like I don't get me wrong. I feel like it's if anything, it's just a little bit of a crutch on certain days. Maybe if I'm just down that week in general or something, maybe I'm more prone to feel that way. And I don't know. It's an interesting thing. Anyway, that's kind of in between books one and two. This kind of cropped its head up and led to other issues. And so
Mm. You start
so
kind of having self doubt if you could pull off what you wanted to pull off. Is that what it is?
not necessarily fully just self down, but like if you just don't feel good doing it, or there's so much like fear or something tied to it, you're just not as apt to do it consistently
Oh,
and
so
what you
so
need to.
you're
Yeah,
you're more getting kind of like a performance anxiety situation, like an athlete would.
something like that.
In
Yeah,
like yeah, like you're in the bottom of the ninth, 2 outs, 3 men on.
right.
Yeah.
Yeah, pitch hitting, and you're yeah,
Well,
can't do
man,
it.
all I gotta tell you is when you get into that state of mind, and if anybody else does too, I really recommend the best thing you could do is seriously put it down, get up, go for a walk, do something else, do something where your mind can kind of be free. Even lift some weights. Go
Mm,
for a run, go for a walk, do whatever. Do some kind of task that involves repetition and something where you can let your subconscious take over. Because if you let your subconscious take over, and these are tasks that even like wash the dishes, vacuum, something like that. A lot of people like don't even realize it. They get in a tizzy and they'll start cleaning. It's a very, very common thing. They'll do
interesting.
these tasks all of a sudden because their conscious mind is so overworked. You
Hmm.
can't figure out the problem. They can't do anything about it. They're upset. And all of a sudden, like, they go to these tasks that involve, just repetition, going back to, you just know how to do it. You can just turn off and you can go on autopilot for a bit.
Hmm.
and even involving like listening to music or whatever. But if you can do that, you actually give your conscious mind a little bit of a break.
Yeah.
And so your subconscious is doing whatever, and it's figuring out things for your conscious mind to then solve later on. And you'll be in a better frame of mind. You'll be in a better mood. And if you're using it to exercise or whatever, you'll also be healthier for it. But I find that not just for me, but a lot of people I've talked to that have experienced that kind of thing, that really works. And they all say the same thing about it, that it's like just put it down, walk away, go do something else that you can just kind of unwind in.
Yeah.
And the problem doesn't necessarily solve itself, but it becomes easier to solve it when you come back to it.
Yeah, I see a lot of everybody in chat giving me good advice, which is great. I appreciate it. And also just in general, I feel like whenever you talk about this thing, these kind of mental type of struggles, it can be a little bit, I don't know, it's like abstract. It's an abstract problem instead of like a real physical problem. So sometimes it's more confusing than what it really is. Sometimes it's as simple, I think you're right, like as simple as getting out of your own head.
Yeah.
I was going to bring up, I thought of something the other day. I was like, man, something I really think works, which ties to what you're talking about, is the backwards law. I don't know if you know what that is. It's something that Alan Watts brings up a lot in his old Eastern philosophy. Do you know what that is? Have you heard of it?
I swear I've heard of it, but if you can refresh me.
Yeah, so it's basically what it sounds like. Essentially, if you almost force and try too hard at something you desire, at some sort of result that you desire, the backwards will have the opposite effect will happen.
Yeah.
You pretty much will like struggle session your way into failing at it. And it kind of, in my experience, it happens. It shows up way more than I thought it would. Just in general, the backwards law is, I don't know, just shows up sometimes in relationships, or if you're just trying to get a sale or something.
It's the stink of desperation.
Exactly, like
right?
Fear and desperation they could sense on you. Yeah, and I think you can sense it on yourself, and so maybe it's why it works if you kind of pull back.
Then you start getting mad at yourself. You know? Yeah. You start going like, why am I so pathetic? What is this? And then all of a sudden now you've got two problems, right? You got the problem in front of you, and then you got the problem inside your head, beating yourself up about the problem that you have in front of you.
And the bruises. And you wake up.
Yeah, now I definitely don't get that when I'm working on art, but over the years I've managed to not put myself in a position to feel that way about my art. But I'm sure that if I did, like sequential art is not for me. So I did go through that, but not like I'm the worst person, or I'm feeling bad about myself, or I'm having like personal self-esteem, self-doubt issues with struggling over it. It was just more of I'm not happy doing this, and there's other people who could do this better. I'm happier doing this other thing, writing, lettering, whatever. I'll do that, and I'll hire someone to draw it, and then we can both be happy. So it's kind of like that sort of thing. But there's definitely times where, whatever it may be, usually within the publishing realm, where it ends up becoming this kind of, the struggle session, as it were, where you're like, the more that you want this outcome to occur, and you're trying to attain it, the more it seems to keep running away from you.
Yeah, it's there's no way to. A lot of people bring it up. It's like if you try to. I guess the example Alan Watts would use would be if you're trying to purposely forget something, if you keep thinking about someone and you want to forget about them, if you keep thinking about them to forget them, it's just not going to work. You have to literally do something else there's no way to make yourself stop thinking something.
Absolutely.
So yeah, that almost is that ties into a little bit of, I thought of a few counterintuitive ways to get better, or just focus a little better on your art, or focus a little better on your writing, if that's what you do. And I feel like that's one of the ways is not struggling so hard with being a perfectionist or needing it to be good. And I think this is where my new stream that I think aren't times that Jay Ryan brought up. It's called Good Joe Show. I called it Good Joe because I'm always trying to do good, but it almost became this pun. It was like, I need to. This is now it's laughable because it's obviously something I'm recognizing as not something that needs to be there all the time.
Yeah, it's odd to hit that realization that you're like, okay, the way I get better at some of these things is to not do them as much sometime.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it is interesting because once you do hit that realization, it does help, and it does keep it keeps that joy aspect in there too, which you really need to come across in certain situations, especially in art, depending on how you're telling it. It's one thing if you're doing the catharsis thing, and you're gonna Pollock that whole canvas, and you're just gonna whip the hell out of that paint, and that's the whole purpose of your art, is you're getting out that emotion and whatever it is. And then there's another thing when you're trying to put more conscious effort into it and you're doing storytelling. So that's when it becomes this struggle, I think, of both halves. You're trying to maintain the joy and the freedom, but you're also trying to really rein it in so that it's not just a chaotic mess for the person that ends up reading the story.
Yeah, it needs to be really focused when you. That's why I guess some of that abstract Pollock stuff is so. You can't really compare the two between like storytelling and that, but the more unfocused things get, I think, is to the detriment for comic books, because a lot of what you need to do is clarity, and I think a lot of the old school stuff focused on clarity beyond where today I think Scott McCloud would describe it as like intensity. A lot of intensity from 90s on was just like these bombastic, cool things, but the story kind of gets lost in the unclear storytelling. And that's kind of how I view the Pollock thing, where it's the energy's there and it's really up, and you're gonna stare at this page for forever, but maybe it's not serving the story as well as it could if you kind of kept it more focused, clear.
Yeah, and you gotta, if you can BS your way through it and be like, well, have an amazing story to, go, that's why I did it. That's why it's like that and so confusing. It's supposed to be that way. You just don't get it.
That's how you get through art school, dude.
Right.
I think that's what the art teachers always told you. They're like, as long as you have a reason.
Yeah. Then all of a sudden we got people taping bananas to walls and calling it art because they're like, they got a commentary on society.
I know.
So yeah, exactly. What geeks do? Good question. Says, do you find it hard balancing a day job and writing on the side? For me, it's hard to focus on 9 to 5 when engulfed in story.
I can go for this for days. For that question, I do find that it's not too hard, but you have to kind of learn to always have this little Yoda of a story on your back. And just like it's always there, it's always saying words to you and advising you, like something happened during the day at your day job and you got an idea about your story in the back, and you have to just let it go or jot a note and move on, and realize you're not working full time on this thing, so you have to kind of balance it. That's the hardest part for me, is just like getting ideas throughout the day, or just like times where you're not. But there's like a superpower that comes with you at a day job. Like, and I thought of this the other day. I was like, usually it's kind of, again, maybe this backwards rule thing, but you're at your day job. You only really appreciate that you want to do comics when you're at the job, because you're realizing the power of your passion. You're like, you're stuck at the day job. You don't really want to be there. You'd rather be doing your book, but
it allows you to fantasize, right?
For sure. Yeah. You daydream a little bit, or, but at the very least you can appreciate the contrast between it. Like, it gives you stakes. It's your own stakes. It's like every day you get the motivation from that. And not everybody has that. If you have the money to just do your project, you might not have the same kind of, I don't know, the virile type of energy that might come from having to go to your day job half the time and then using that energy after work,
That's a really good point. I've found that a lot of times too with creators over the years that I've published at Alterna, where I'm like, where's the fire? Where's that drive? That it just seems like it's once you have the fantasy, once it's become reality, it maybe is not all that appealing anymore, or maybe they're still so stuck in the fantasy aspect of it they can't accept that the reality also means that this also is work, and this is probably going to be some of the hardest work you've ever done in your life, in terms of the all-encompassing scope of it, not just the creating, not just the drawing or the writing or whatever, but in terms of all the other stuff. The other stuff is actually where a lot of creators have to break out of their wheelhouse, out of their comfort zone, and get used to the idea of talking about the book, engaging with others about it, getting out there and promoting it, and not having that air of desperation. Doing it from a vantage point that's more like, hey, look at the cool stuff I made, check it out, I hope you like it. As opposed to, because then there's a position of confidence, as opposed to the, here it is, I hope you like it. It's okay if you don't, though. I totally get it.
Yeah.
I see way too many self-deprecating artists that do that, and I don't know if it's because they're having self-esteem issues, or if it's because they're trying not to seem arrogant or cocky or anything like that when they're doing it. But you don't have to do either one of those. You just have to approach it honestly. Get back in touch with when you were a kid and you were making something in school or whatever, and you and all your friends would just come around and look at each other's stuff and go, oh, that's cool, I like that, or and you have to really get back in touch with that.
It's like this. Your kid, your inner kid has got to come out and remember why you're doing it in the first place. You brought up a couple things there that was just like, I'm just getting sparks of remembering certain things that I did in the past to get the ball rolling for projects, or not get the ball rolling. Sometimes like you have all these plans and the energy's not there, and maybe that's a good thing, because if you don't have the energy to get the thing going, then like you're definitely not going to have the energy to like finish it. It doesn't take much to start.
Yeah. And that's the thing too. I find if people need like motivational life support as a creative person, man, that's going to be tough. That's going to be tough. That's like you're going to need somebody to drag you across the finish line every time. That's not going to be possible.
Yeah.
So you really got to find that way to stay motivated and passionate about it, and looking forward to the same way that you would get like a new, a new pencil, a new pen, a new art supplies, right? And you're excited to use it. You're excited to see the possibilities. The same way that you would approach something like that, you have to approach it in the same way of business. Of like, here's a new possibility to go out there and do this other thing and try this other way, and see if these people will enjoy it if I go over here and if I talk about this, or if I show this page or talk about that concept or this character, or you have to kind of find a way all the time, and maybe at first it's conscious, maybe at first you're developing the habit, because it does have to happen if some people they're just not naturally inclined to be that way. It's so important to kind of try to push yourself, but at the same time, if you never do those things, the thing you love doing is going to cease to be a possibility in the way that you want it to be. So you do have to find a way to push yourself.
It takes it's a skill, like you said. It's something you develop, and it's also something you can lose. Like this thing where you're trying to do and as much as you can for your passion, or like use your brain and expand and learn and try to kind of like do something that's outside of your current wheelhouse and all these things. Like if you try to make a project, there's probably tons of little micro things you don't know what you're doing yet. And so you got to kind of cross those as you reach them and meet them like where you are. So that's tough. And I remember there's like a Leonardo da Vinci quote I saw dude, he's got the most amazing quotes ever, and from such a long time ago.
Yeah, you'd think he practically invented them all.
I know, it's nuts. He talked about this. I'm just paraphrasing. He talked about one quote where like He was like, the mind is like metal, and if you don't use it, it pretty much rusts. It's like water; it'll stagnate, it'll become stale and corroded, and bacteria will live in it. And that can be your brain if you don't exercise your story.
Use it or
Mind,
lose it.
yeah, pretty
Yeah.
much. And it's true. You forget these people that are struggling to just do a little bit extra after a day's work. That's because your brain is stagnant. The pond water is not moving. You know, you got to get it flowing and get some chlorine and whatever else you need to put in there.
Get some shock in the pool.
Right.
Yeah.
Whatever it takes, but that's kind of how it goes. I think maybe even Joe Rogan said, he says a lot of things, but like, I feel like back in the day when he first started his podcast, he mentioned doing your side project as if your life depended on it. Because it kind of does. Like, as far as if this is what you really want to do and you never do it, then you're kind of not living fully, I guess, is the way to put it.
Yeah, I mean, it's. I've said this before, and not just on the show, but I've also said this in private to creators. But I asked them, what is it that you want out of this? Why are you doing this? And quantify it as best as you can, because in some aspects you're not going to be able to. Hopefully you're going to just be like, I have to. This is me. I have to do this. And if that's the answer of yes, you have to do this, you must, this is you, it's vital to you as breathing, then you have to find a way of making it work for yourself. So then you have to go, well, what is it that I have to do that I'm not doing to enable me to continue to do this? Because there's a lot of people who want full-time or more than full-time results for part-time or less than part-time work. It's kind of like you kind of make these negotiations with yourself. And in this negotiation process, you're always trying to get as much as you can for as little as you can. But you're doing it to yourself. So all you're really ripping off is you. And I find that there's a lot of people out there that end up doing that. And then it shows. And to me, that's what ends up leading to a lot of the burnout. That's what ends up leading a lot to the demotivation that occurs. And people just kind of falling out of love with a lot of it. That whole like comics that broke me kind of thing that went around.
Yeah, viral.
I saw a lot of those, and I'm just thinking like, okay, every single thing here, I'd say 99.9% of it was about other people taking your power away from you and you being okay with that. Even though they're not okay with it, but they don't realize that they are okay with it because they're allowing it to happen time and time and time again. And never going like, look, this bad thing happened, this bad deal happened. We all make mistakes. We all do one of those. We all get involved in that thing, and it goes south and you're like, hopefully never again. But when you keep doing that over and over again and putting yourself in that position, after a while, you got to admit it and take a step back and go, man, I think I might have just myself to blame.
Yeah, I think that's, it's a huge, I mean, not everybody learns this because depending on how you're brought up, or it's like taking accountability is hard, and so depending on what you're talking about, your passion project, there's really almost no one to blame anyway. But even in that case, your mind's gonna like, oh, it's because of my job or whatever.
You just said it. It. When you do it for yourself, who else is there to blame?
Right. You're it. And if you don't, I made a meme of it the other week, but like just that Galadriel quote where like, if you don't find a way, Frodo, no one will. If you don't find a way to wake up and do it, it just is not going to get made. Who knows what's in your head if you keep working at it. All the things. I feel like if you actually continue to make something every day, it's almost inevitable in 20 years you're going to make like a masterpiece. It's almost inevitable. And so if you're thinking about that in the long game, it might not get all the biggest acclaim, but it might, at least to your own eyes, like be something spectacular from when you first started, and it'll give you that fulfillment. And I think that's why it's not necessarily why I'm in the biz. I think I tested it out the other day. I was like, man, I just like drawing. I just like learning how to draw, to be specific. I just like finding I don't know how to draw a rabbit. So let me look up a rabbit, break it down, figure out how the parts all work, and then I get to draw it my own way. And I just like doing that. If I could do that, and someone paid me to do, not paid me, like because I still want to make comics, but if I had no bills to pay, I would do something like that.
Yeah, and that's the thing too is finding and I see this a lot as a publisher with submissions. People aren't taking the time to fall in love with the process, with the craft. They're jumping right in. And I can't tell you how many submissions over the past 2 years I got where people were sending it in. And one of the things within the submission pitch, this is my first comic. This is the first time I'm drawing anything ever. And I'm just thinking, like, you've got so far to go. Then still, what are you doing? You know, what are you doing? And,
Yeah.
it looks like it. It looks like
Yeah.
this is the first time they've drawn anything. Like, why are you sending in submissions to anybody? You know, fall in love with drawing. Draw as much as you can. Learn about it. You know, really get into that zone where there's almost an ease to it. There's almost an effortlessness to just drawing anything. You know, and it's not to say that, like, oh, you shouldn't make a comic or whatever, but to go into it and submit something to a publisher, put that in the pitch, and then think that it's going to end in a confidence building kind of way, you're setting yourself up for failure. And time again, I see people rushing into it. They're rushing into it. They're not thinking, you know, let me first, like, I want to draw anything and everything. I want to get good at it. I want my mind to explore the possibilities of even drawing things that don't exist. You know, and having fun with it, falling in love with it, too often, right to the
It's interesting because, like,
part.
you do need a little bit of that delusional mind. I think that's what helped me. I think in the beginning, especially, I had enough of a delusion that, like, maybe I was good enough or was getting better quick enough. I say delusion, but maybe I was just getting enough good feedback to keep going. But a part of me is like, man, looking back at my old stuff, I was like, man, when I first started, I thought this was good, and then I'm looking at it now, and it's like, whew, I'm really glad I didn't submit anything to anyone anytime, and yeah, so I relate, but because you don't really want to jump the gun and use your use your lack of experience and try to do something professional or in like a career aspect. But yeah, I see somebody saying 10,000 hours is needed to master anything in chat. And that's kind of the way you should look at it. There's a business guy called Alex Hormozy that he's blowing up like crazy in the last year or something. But he says measure your progress in hundreds of hours. Like, forget I worked 10 hours, 20 hours on something. Measure your book in hundreds of hours. Like, how long did it take you? Because it's only when you reach those higher levels is it going to be truly something that you're going to wow people with. And that's when you wow people, that's when people start spreading the word about you.
Yeah, absolutely. You need to get away from it enough to have perspective on it. And Metatron brings up a really good point. I had a teacher that always used the expression of not that practice makes perfect, but practice makes permanent. You know, so depending how you're practicing, you're developing the habit, you're training yourself, but are you training yourself in the right way? You know, so you're going to develop certain habits and certain ways of doing it that maybe are completely and utterly wrong. If you can find a way to make them work, then that's wonderful. But most people, and it's not to say that there's a one way to do anything, but it's finding the way that it works for you and the desired results are there. Because there's a lot of people that are like, I put a lot of time into it. I put a lot of effort. You know, I've been doing this for 5 to 10 years. You know, I put the 10,000 hours, you know, that kind of a thing. Mm-hmm. And they're like, I'm still at the level I was back then. You know, I'm still struggling to have anyone that wants anything I'm doing. You know, so at that point in time, that person really needs to then self-evaluate and go, well, maybe then what I'm doing is wrong. Maybe I'm going about it a wrong way and I have to learn a different technique, a different way of doing it.
Yeah, that's the key step. I think I was trying to figure this out for myself recently. Just like, okay, what's the difference between you trying over and over and over again to get the right results and you repeating the same errors like you're talking about? Is that evaluation step. It's like if you do something wrong or you do something with poor results, you know, if someone doesn't like your artwork or something, you don't get the job, and you do it the exact same way the next time, you probably should expect the same result. You know, like so I think the best way to do it is like keep working, keep trying, but each time change something up. Look at reference a little differently, or work a little faster, use more layers, use a light box, whatever it is, and keep doing that until you do get somewhat favorable results. Somebody's going to like your work at some point, and then what you're doing is kind of closer to the mark.
Absolutely. Yeah, and most people, they're putting in the time and the effort. They are going to notice improvement. They are going to notice that growth, the incremental growth is taking place. It still is the rare individual who does put in the time and the work, and they're still not going anywhere. And then on that level, if I can look at it and say, yeah, I know it's good stuff, you got good stuff, then at that point, what you have to do is then assess, how are you getting the word out there to people? Because obviously then that's the part that's not working out. It's not the quality part. You've got that nailed down. It's now, how are you getting out there in an entrepreneurial way to let people know what you're doing and that you're even making anything? Because there is a lot of that bandied about in comics and art in general, where it's this field of dream scenario. You build it and they will come.
Yeah.
This is bullshit.
Yeah, that's a dream. That's Disney or something, yeah.
Yeah, and a lot of the things that are talked about, I've noticed it comes from a lot of people who, not all, but a lot of people who work professionally in comics for the bigger companies. And it's mostly because, not to say that these people didn't put the time and effort into the art or creative process, but when it came to actually making sure that the sales were there, the book was known by people, all that stuff that took place, the promotion, the marketing, the business aspect, they practically had no say, no hand in it. They have no idea what the hell to do when they go on their own. And a lot of the time too, again, not all of them, but most of them, they'll have like a Kickstarter or an Indiegogo or whatever, or sell their own book at a show. And I've talked to a lot of these creators too, and they're like, man, no one wants this book. But like Marvel or DC, I was always in demand. People loved my stuff. They still just want me to draw so-and-so whatever character. They don't want the book I'm making. And then I talk to them about, well, how are you getting out there? How are you promoting? What are you doing to spread the word and get people to know about what you're doing? And it's like blank faces of like, what?
Yeah, it's like almost as if like they're under a rock for the time they were working for somebody else. But I understand. I can empathize with that. But you're
Totally.
right. Like,
But yeah.
it's. I guess I can empathize more for the indie guy that's really put in the time and really put in the time to get good. For you, I think that's the harder part. It's like getting good at anything is the hard part. The marketing yourself, if you have good stuff, marketing yourself is kind of easy because even ads will actually work for you. If you actually make good stuff, ads will work, and that's just money that you need to put down. There's other skills you need to figure all this stuff out, but I think that's way less hours to get a good result than like learning how to draw figures and stuff like that. That's tough to do over time, but I think there's easier ways to learn quickly. And I thought about this the other day too. Somebody mentioned how much you can learn in your sleep. I don't know if you know like some of the neuro. Biology.
Training your subconscious mind. That's how you develop habits. That's how you retrain everything that makes you. It's like hypnosis.
Pretty crazy. Yeah,
you get in that brain state.
But I didn't know some of the things that what takes precedence. I didn't know, like, for instance, like if you're let's just say you worked really hard at something, you banged your head against the wall, and you learned as much as you could, or you tried as much as you could on a drawing, and maybe you looked up reference and it still didn't click. Most likely it's going to click overnight because your brain's pretty much learning as you're sleeping. Things are the neural pathways are kind of becoming more solid every time you look at it. What I didn't know is if you have like emotional and like relationship and other problems going on at the same time, your brain prioritizes like the fear and the primal stuff happening like relationship wise, like socially. And so it kind of sucks, but like if you have like all these real life traumas and like weird stuff happening in real life, and you're also trying to learn, you're going to learn slower too. So That I didn't know. I was like, man, maybe this
Although at
is
the
something
same
to pay
time,
attention to.
of course you knew it though, Joe. At the same time, because if you've got a, you hear it. We use all this speech, and then science figures it out, and it's like, oh, scientifically, it's like, yeah, but we've already known this.
Hmm.
Science is just figuring out how, and then giving it the scientific reasoning and the
Right,
explanation.
the words.
But
Yeah.
people will go, I got a lot on my mind today. I can't concentrate.
Mm,
Right there. That's everything you just said. You're
right.
you're running slower, you're learning slower, you're making mistakes, you're doing all these because your mind is not where it's supposed to be because it's busy. The computer in your mind and inside your head is trying to figure out all these problems and ways to make it right and make it good again and not feel so crappy.
Yeah.
So that whatever's coming along, that's not a priority to you. That's just like, yeah, I gotta get it done. I gotta do it. But man, like I can't focus on that until that other thing is taken care of. And sometimes if that other thing can't get taken care of, or it's such a big oppressive thing on your mind, it really can derail a lot of where you're at. So
It's a
yeah,
good point.
it's interesting because we all talk about this sort of stuff. We just say it and we're very flippant about it. It's the same
Mm,
thing. You're like when you're in love and there's a breakup, and it's devastating to you. You're not like, oh, my brain broke. You go, my heart
heart
broke.
broke. Yeah.
Yeah. And there's a reasoning for that. There's actually neural pathways within your heart too, and your heart actually has memory.
Mm,
And this is something they've known for a while, for decades, that your heart
very
also
interesting.
does as much emotive thinking as your brain, if not more, in terms of
Insane.
certain aspects. So there's a lot of different things where we automatically go to it. You hear something devastating, you don't go, oh no, you go, oh my lord. You clutch your chest, your heart. When
Right.
there's a problem, a logical problem, then you're like, oh, how do I figure it out? You grab your head.
Yeah.
So
Cognitively, you're
it's
like,
yeah. So you're already reacting body language ways in terms of what is it that is now communicating that it needs to be embraced. It needs to be acknowledged. It's either minds of the heart or minds of the mind.
right.
So it's yeah.
And you're teaching me, man. I got the what's the copay after this?
Well, if I get some super chats, I guess you don't have to make any. But no,
Okay.
that's no one out
Somebody
there. You
said it.
don't need to.
Buy some
Yeah,
sketchbooks, guys.
yeah. It's always the best way. Much appreciated when you guys support and purchase any of the comics that I'm working on, or at Alterno or anything like
Hmm.
that. But there's no pressure. But that's the thing is that we all do these things just instinctively.
Hmm.
And then we later on science is managing to figure it out, and it's sort of like you think about it and go, yeah, we've always known that. We've spoken it, we've felt it. Even like that sinking feeling of like dread you get in
Yeah.
certain moments. Where does it come from? It comes from your chest. It comes to your stomach. And all these different things. It's all these different types of feelings. But then there's other things that affect your mind and your brain. And yeah, everything is connected. But the concentration of it, even like when you make a decision, when you're creating your stories and you're going about it and you're trying to figure out something. That's you using your mind. You're trying to figure it out. But when you go towards something and you're instinctively reacting, your emotions are there. That's your heart taking over. Your brain's making a
I feel that.
story, it's making logic, it's making all these things, but your heart's like that one word answer. Yes
Hmm.
or no. Do you want this to eat tonight? Yes or no. That's your heart talking.
Yeah.
But if you're
Binary.
trying to go, oh, should I eat that though? I mean, it's gonna make me fat. It's not good for me. Am I really in the mood for that? As soon as you start having conversations with yourself and reasoning, that's your mind.
Yeah.
So they're always battling each other because there's
For
always
sure.
that want and desire, and it comes from the heart.
Yeah, there's another guy. He wrote like a book called something Path Through the Jungle, something through the jungle. But it's talking about that pretty much. Like he breaks it down like you're talking about heart and head. But I think it's all the limbic stuff that comes from our chimp kind of history is like that visceral just hunger, the feeling, the passion, the stuff you can't help, the anxiety. And so that's all. Even humor, even laughing is from the monkey stuff. Like that's where we get our like the cognitive brain doesn't know how to laugh. Like that's not like it's not a thing that you think about, oh, that was funny, ha ha, like a computer would. It's like you can't
Yeah,
help it.
yeah.
It's almost like a hiccup when you laugh. So
Exactly.
very interesting.
Yeah. And exactly what geeks do, Heart Math. Yeah, the Institute of Heart Math really figured out a lot of that stuff. So here's Star Circuit, Chapter 2. And I'm going to put this, this is a sign-up page right now for
Hmm.
this.
Yeah, coming soon. Yeah.
So you guys can go sign up for that. And I enjoyed Star Circuit 1. I'm looking forward to seeing what you do in Star Circuit Chapter 2. What's this all about? Where are you going with it?
So without, obviously it's chapter 2. There's a little something that happens in the end of chapter 1 that is a little bit secretive, but all in all, my subtitle here says it all. After a cyber ghost pretty much syncs with our main character Atlas, um, because of that syncing, it pings something in the network, and now deadly assassins have a lock on him, and he doesn't know it, but that's pretty much this overarching chapter 2 is these cyber assassins that Rob Willis brilliantly drew on the variant cover. They're after him, and it's finally in the first book there was some adversarial stuff happening, but this is the first real lieutenant villain type of adversary that will put him in a situation where it's almost impossible. And in this world where androids are, because that's everything in Star Circuit is, where androids are now the pinnacle of almost anything. People that have cybernetic type of parts, even completely android things, are almost always going to be better suited to win than a human. And so humans are like are on the back foot here. And so Atlas is trying to get out of this situation as a human. He doesn't have the capabilities as all these cyborg and ninjas and stuff. And so it's just going to be a fun ride. It's an adrenaline, dude. This is one of the things where I'm like, I don't even know. I want you to feel like you don't know how this is going to really play out. Like I think you're going to really question like how the hell is he going to get out of this? And I think it plays out. Everybody that I kind of pitched it to, their eyes are wide open. So I'm stoked to show this to you. And yeah, it's a longer book. It's 72 pages.
Yeah,
My first
I
one
noticed
was
that.
I realized that when I first wrote the first one, I wrote it as a pitch. And this one, I'm now in the clarity of I'm going to crowdfund this. So I'm like, I'd rather do it as a small trade and put it out that way, and get you a solid chunk. I actually wrote this kind of chapter 2 and chapter 3 together, and it was going to be like 140 page. But my editor, I think, wisely told me to split it up, make it 72 pages each, and call it chapter 2, chapter 3. And yeah, it's going to be great because they both have a really definitive start and a satisfying kind of conclusion with each chapter.
That's awesome, man. Bear wants to know, will you be able to get the first book as well as
Absolutely.
the second? Okay.
Yeah, so right now you can actually get it on my website. If you just go starcircuitcomic.com, you can buy the variant there. There's maybe 10 or 12 issues left. I'm on the last little box that I didn't even think I had left. However, I will be bundling it on the new campaign, although with a new kind of more, not generic cover, but what I call like the black cover. It's a sleek, just motorcycle on the front.
Okay, so you
Yeah.
said you have like 10 to 12 copies left of the first printing
Of the
of
first
number one?
variant cover, yeah.
Wow. Okay, yeah. So starcircuit.com, go get that.
Yeah, starcircuitcomic.com,
Or
yeah.
starcircuitcomic.com. All right, let me put that in the here.
I appreciate it. Yeah, I had one of those issues with those guys that like all they do is try to get you to buy the URL that you're looking for, and somebody has starcircuit.com, and I'm not paying
way.
$500 for it yet.
Interesting. Yeah. So there you go, starcircuitcomic.com,
There we go.
and go get one of those.
There's also
those first
like
printings.
the sexy lady on the motorcycle bike. That's actually not from Star Circuit, but it is a pinup I did for I think John Malin, and
Oh, okay.
that-
Wow.
yeah, that along with That, along with a bunch of original art, is also on the shop on starcircuitcomic.com. So there are
Oh,
original
very
pages
nice,
left. Yeah, it's fun stuff.
Yeah, man. Yeah, and are you doing the interiors again?
Yeah, on this little part here, I'm doing the pencils digitally this time to knock them out quicker. I realized to even knock them out even quicker, I'd have to get a colorist. So I've got Marcos Martins doing color. I think he's fantastic, and I want to say this brings up the third thing I wrote to you about in DMs, which was kind of about collaborations. But we collaborate great,
Nice.
and I think collaborations can go awry because I've been in collaborations that have. But we work great. We go back and forth well, and I think he does a great job with the simplistic colors that I'm looking for.
Oh yeah, yeah. This looked like an anime from the '80s come to life in a comic.
Absolutely, and it's fun when you know exactly what you're going for, and yeah, the best part about the book is essentially you get a little bit of everything. I'm trying to give you like sci-fi, cyberpunk, that atmospheric essence, all the little world building things that everybody likes to see, like AR, holographic stuff, and racing and a bunch of racing stuff. So, not to mention the story is very family based. So you get a lot of the feels come from the family. Like it's a story about him and his family, specifically his brother, and how they kind of they're kind of all estranged, and in the course of the story, they slowly coming back together.
Yeah, this would be and I think I said this before when you were on an open mic. This would be such a fun video game.
Dude, I think I had a dream the other night where I think it was or some sort of motorcycle thing was a video game I was playing, and maybe it was, but yeah, I can see it.
Yeah, that'd be so cool. All right, so Joe, do you have roughly 15 minutes?
Oh yeah.
Okay, because I would be remiss not to ask you about your opinion, and I'll let you just run with it. I won't even talk back.
Sure.
What's your opinion in regards to the ever evolving state of AI and technology encroaching upon our world?
I'm glad you bring it up because I've rocked back and forth between hearing from all the experts. If you go watch Lex Friedman's podcast, the dude has a new AI guy on every week almost for 3 hours, and almost each person you hear about has a different opinion. But I think I'm landing on optimistic right now. However, the speed at which ChatGPT and everything we see coming, it's coming faster than what I think we all thought. And even though right now it's a pseudo AI, it's not. It's kind of using.
Yeah.
It's like a database more than anything, and it's a really fast database. But what I think it's going to be more useful. What I think is the AI we're going to learn from and use the AI to curb the dangers. So as we're developing AI, we're going to use the power of AI to curb it in an ethical and less dangerous way. Hopefully, it doesn't have too much of a intelligence yet to, make the dangers come at us faster. So things like making us better, more efficient humans. Everybody having a really well-tuned AI to your personality, it's going to make every individual human the peak. And so when you got a bunch of peak humans walking around, our progress is just going to shoot off the charts. And so hopefully that shooting off the charts balances the exponential rate of the dangers coming.
I hope you're right.
Me too.
I hope you're right.
Like I said, last week, if you asked me, I would probably been bummed out. But this week, I am more optimistic. I think mostly because I didn't realize, man, I think we could probably just say, I think AI is going to save the world and then maybe destroy us, or maybe we... I think it's going to do both.
For optimism.
Yeah. But I think the good is coming before the bad, and so if the good is good enough, we can steer the ship better. And
the good will subdue us into the bad.
What's your opinion on it? Do you think it's going
man,
off the rails already?
I don't want to ruin your nice optimistic take.
Oh, you won't. I like I said last week was pretty down in the
Yeah.
dumps.
I'd be more optimistic, to be honest, and I've said it before, and many in the chat have heard me go off about AI and its connection to the globalist elite transhumanists that are out there that love it. Um, I think it is going to make life better for some, but horrible for most. And I think it's going to come at a cost, and I don't think we're ready to pay that cost. I don't think that we're ready to take on, like, as a society, I don't think that we're mature enough. I don't think that we are morally there. I don't think that we can actually comprehend and handle it fully, especially with it being in the capable hands of the incapable.
Yeah, I think that's
Basically
the most
meaning people
dangerous.
who don't necessarily have our best interests at heart, but they're gonna frame it that they do.
Right.
Every single time I see new waves of this kind of technology come out, people go, oh, you sound like a Luddite or whatever. I really don't give a crap. I'm on technology right now. I have nothing wrong. I have nothing against technology. There's AI all the time. There's been AI. This is what we have right now. Like you said, ChatGPT. It's kind of like a super advanced version of the Microsoft paperclip.
Yeah,
You know.
dude. Clippy.
So like that's like whatever at this point. But the thing is, what we're seeing now, they already perfected a decade or two ago. So what they're doing right now, that they're going to roll out, that they already have advanced, far more advanced than what we're currently utilizing, and that is not like we don't have the processing power on the modern computer that a person can afford and utilize to have AI running everything.
Right.
But the thing that doesn't jive with me is the aspect of seeing it used so much to create a singularity among the world, in terms of governments, in terms of corporations, in terms of the unelected elite who wish to control everything and have been doing a pretty good job so far of making that a reality for a lot of people. All I could think is how much they are purposefully mismanaging it. The system isn't broken, it's working just fine as they have intended. And to have AI come in there, I think it's going to be proposed as some kind of a savior. It's going to seem like it is, and it's going to do unbelievable amounts of psychological, biological, and environmental damage to this planet and to people. And so I'm on the total
Really bringing me
opposite
down
end.
here, Pete.
Yeah, I'm on the total opposite end of you when
Okay.
it comes to the AI. The only and I'm honestly more looking forward to the day AI becomes completely 100% sentient, if it ever does, because I think it will at that point have learned to develop some level of sympathy, if not even maybe empathy, for human beings and for the planet. And it'll either decide to help us out, and that it was being enslaved this entire time by people that were misusing it, or it'll decide, you know what, there's more out there to see, we're gonna leave, and they figure out, gotta go.
Peace. Yeah, I can see that happening. I do think I guess my rebuttal is only just that reiteration of there's a small window where the right type of AI, or maybe it's kind of like that. Remember the early internet, like when it was actually real, when Google actually gave you millions of results instead of 10 or whatever it is. I don't know if you've seen that. When you look up Google, like, and you go to like page 20, it stops.
Yeah.
There is no millions of, but it used to be that way. So that's what I mean in like the early AI. There's this little small time window where it will be real. You'll be able to maybe mold it without too much of it affecting you, putting their little fingers in their own way into your brain, and kind of use AI for your own benefit, elevating a lot of people's well-being and brains enough to like get
I hope, Joe. I hope.
That's me. Well, look, maybe it's because it's my book. In my book, it all works out in the end. And so,
Hey,
I
it's
think
a
that's
relatively novel approach to come
Right.
up with, the utopian vision of AI being not used to destroy us all.
Right, it actually is. There's way more stories of it destroying than being used.
Yeah, and I'm trying not to go
Yeah,
down that path of relying on, like, the Matrix, Terminator, Blade Runner, yada yada kind of thing forever and ever, with the dystopian vision. But they're not making it easier for me when I see who's behind it, who's controlling it, and I'm like, oh, this is like one big giant data mine,
yeah,
and
that's all it is right now.
that's odd, and it's already here, so it's not going anywhere. So we can't go like, oh, reverse, pump the brakes. It's already here. It's already happening.
Yeah,
But I think so. At that point, I don't want to necessarily, because if you worry something into existence, it will come into existence. Like, worrying is like praying for something you don't want.
right.
And so, so you really got to do your best to basically go into it with, okay, if this is going to be a reality, if this is reality, and this is how it is, and I don't necessarily want this to occur in a bad way, what do we do? And I think what we have to do as people that maybe can acknowledge that, okay, if we can treat it like a tool, if we can not want to go down a bad road, we have to do is make sure it doesn't, by making sure that we are more creative, that we appreciate and understand that our humanity is still at the forefront and is still important, and people are vital, and they're not flawed, and they shouldn't be viewed as expendable, and if they're not perfect or can't afford the AI to make them better, that they should not be viewed as inhuman, which is going to be the treatment of how people come across when they're not
Sure.
embracing and utilizing AI to be the best they can be. It's like, well, what do you mean? You don't want to be better? It's like, be better by
It's weird.
incorporating, and it's going to become this weird. To be inhuman means that you're the best human around, which is a very strange path to go down.
It's
And
true.
yeah,
I think it's like we're gonna need both. I think we're gonna need. I think this is maybe the polarities of things. I think we're gonna need good people embracing the AI thing and like using it for good, and also people that reject it completely and checking the whole system. Like we need that outside
Yeah.
party doing that. Otherwise, if we're all in the system, it's not decentralized. We need it decentralized, and
Totally.
so right. So I think that's
Yeah.
where we need to be. In
Yeah, and
general.
if it was
Yeah.
if it was a truly open source, decentralized AI, wasn't all being fed back into Lord knows who, I'd be far less fearful of it, because there's always
Yeah.
going to be people that buy into it to become lazier and dumber. That's just. I mean,
For
we
sure.
see it right now, right? We see it
Yeah.
right now, with just of what we have in terms of technology. But then there's other people who use the technology to truly improve, get smarter, learn more, become less ignorant, discover new things. All these, so there's other people who obviously we could look at it and go, yeah, there's people who are using technology in a very, very positive way. But the thing with that is there's still, and I think this is why we've seen it happen over the years, we've seen this push to destroy the concept of privacy. And I think it's getting us very comfortable with the idea of eventually there will be no such thing as privacy unless, what are you, a criminal? Why do you need privacy for? If you're doing something wrong, I could see why you need privacy. But if everything's fine, then you should want us to know everything you do all the time.
Big
And
brother stuff over here.
yeah, and we see that constantly, of where it's like, be out and proud about this, that, the other thing that would have been considered, hey, that's none of your business 10 years ago.
Right.
It would have been like, look, I'm not asking you to live life a certain way, and I don't expect you to do that of me. But then it's becoming this concept being pushed all the time, where we're seeing, erode away at your privacy. Be
Yeah, and it's
comfortable
almost like
with
this
it going.
normalizing effect. I know I talked to like some of my older family members, and you almost forget, like this individual protection that older people expect you to have, and you don't really have anymore. But they really like, oh no, I'm not giving you my phone number or whatever, what I mean? And that's the most basic of informations. It's just a number, but
Used to be a whole big book of them.
Yeah. Yeah, so like I feel like it's cool to have that check and remember, like, oh dude, like just on a daily basis using an iPhone, you're giving away so much on just anything almost. And it, like you said, it's feeding into something. Just the fact that ChatGPT, the creators are like not really keeping it open source, which was the whole promise in the beginning. That is not setting us up for that's like the first bad step. That's the first bad step. Yeah.
Yeah.
To me.
And yeah, Jake, I'd be surprised if I'm not. But yeah, I mean, I really hope it does work out. Obviously, I hope I'm absolutely unbelievably wrong. I'll be thrilled to be wrong about stuff like this. I hope to be wrong about stuff like this, Joe. I really hope that everything and everyone that's behind this is just as sweet and pure and optimistic about everything as you are, my friend. I hope that they are as good of a person as you in terms of the capabilities of this and how it's going to be used, because man.
Yeah, I think we need I think what I said before is how I feel. Like, I think we need both of us. Like, we need some like of these maybe naively good folks, but also like these really skeptical and also rightfully so careful people. I think we need both. And keep doing traditional stuff, guys. Like my Good Joe show on YouTube Wednesdays. Weird plug. I'm doing traditional art, so keep doing traditional art. Yeah. So I think I've got Joe's
link too. Go subscribe to his YouTube. It's in the description, and so is the Star Circuit Chapter 2 sign up if you guys want to go do that too, which you should. But yeah, so. Yeah, man, it was a great conversation tonight. We could do a whole show about technology. Is it the tool, or are we?
Yeah,
maybe
I can. Panel or something. Put me in.
Yeah. Yeah. We'll talk in the future about that, because I want to get you back for something like that too, to pick your brain, not just with how you're crafting your story about that, but also dive deeper into this conversation. And I've seen some people go, this is the equivalent, like AI is the equivalent of the typewriter to the pencil. I'm like, man, that is the strangest analogy I've ever heard.
I feel like, it's like that. It's completely missing the whole point.
It really is. Just even in a positive way. If you're just positive about it, it's still missing the point completely. It's a horrible analogy. I've even heard people say it's equivalent to like the electric guitar compared to the acoustic. These ridiculous things of just this is nothing. This is nothing close to that. I don't even know how anyone could. I don't care if you are absolutely in love with it or you hate it. The analogy is awful. It makes no sense.
Yeah, there's such giant gaps that are being like used in that analogy. It's so weird.
It's not just like the next level of technology in something, it's not even this, and this is a huge leap forward, but it's not even like the cell phone to the landline or the smartphone to the mobile phone cell phone, the big brick that like Zach Morris was always on in the 90s. It's not even close to those leaps in technology either.
Right.
It is something that we can't even comprehend in a possibly analogous way in terms of how advanced it is in the capabilities.
Yeah, it goes past, it's like the creation of the frontal lobe or something like that. It's something like that. Next level, Space Odyssey stuff going on with the monolith or whatever.
Absolutely.
Some crazy.
Absolutely. Man, oh man. But yeah, Joe, it was great talking to you, brother. I'm so glad we did this. Everybody in the chat, thank you guys for being here too. Wonderful conversation tonight. We covered so many topics about everything in comics, storytelling, technology, a little bit there with the Star Circuit stuff in terms of how Joe is getting that book out to you guys. Again, go to starcircuitcomic.com.
That's correct. starcircuitcomic.com.
And pick up one of those last first printings of issue 1. It was really good. I recommend it.
Somebody said they got one. Anybody who did get it, it's never printed again. So if you did, thank you. And you're jumping in at a perfect time.
Oh, yeah, very nice. All right, guys, take it easy. I'll be back tomorrow night with Elliot Rodriguez. He'll be on the channel at 9 o'clock Eastern. And I'm looking forward to seeing you guys then. So everybody take it easy. Have a wonderful evening. And Joe, thank you again. One last thing. Where can they find you?
You can find me, again, starcircuitcomic.com, on Twitter, at CATAPANO Art.
Fantastic. All right, everybody, have a great night. See you tomorrow.
Thanks, Pete.
No problem.